All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this session. So the title of our session today is Restoring Marine and Coastal Ecosystems, Blue Carbon at the Heart of Africa's Climate Goals. Now, I'm sure many of you know what blue carbon ecosystems are, particularly in Africa, mangroves and seagrass meadows. These areas are vitally important for the carbon budget within our oceans. They store significant amounts of carbon within the sediments, and unfortunately, they are under great threat. Now, they are a threat due to degradation in the case of seagrass. In the case of mangroves, they are still being cleared. And this is really um, the consequences of damaging these ecosystems are really intense, not just for the carbon cycles, but also for the coastal communities that live alongside these areas. Now, we in the climate field, we talk about blue carbon ecosystems. Coastal communities call these areas home. And what we know is that the protection and restoration of these areas is most likely to be done well by coastal communities, adjacent communities. And why is that? Because they have the most to lose from their continued degradation and the most to win if we are able to restore these ecosystems. Now, we've got a number of means of doing that, and what we have found is that community-based mechanisms such as LMMAs are a really profoundly important way to be able to value adjacent communities' contributions and capacity to become guardians of blue carbon ecosystems. However, we need to drive more financing and develop more solutions that can enable coastal communities to become ecosystem protectors. Now, we can do that through the development of enterprise approaches, means towards valuing these ecosystems through aquaculture, potentially in the future through carbon credits and biodiversity credits that can accrue to coastal guardians if, and this is a big if, we can prove that their efforts are having an impact on greater carbon sequestration and improving the biodiversity in these areas. We know from previous discussions today that financing is really lacking towards the, especially directly to coastal communities. So we've got a great bunch of speakers here today, spanning from direct community practitioners through civil society working to support blue carbon ecosystem protection, as well as those sitting and developing policy and finance strategies far from the coastline. So I'm going to introduce our speakers today and give them the opportunity to speak a little bit more about their work directly towards protecting and restoring blue carbon ecosystems. Thank you very much for joining the session, and we want this to be interactive. So at any time, if there is a question that is related to something that has just been spoken, the time to is right directly afterwards. So if any of what the speakers are going through today really resonates or creates a burning question in your mind, please don't hesitate to raise your hand so that we can get you involved in the conversation immediately whilst it's on your mind. So I'm going to go through one by one. As we can see up here, we've got a very wide variety of different practitioners here, policymakers, sea cucumber farmers, and what we're wanting to hear today is their experiences in protecting blue carbon ecosystems and what can be done to inspire greater protection, drive more financing to coastal communities, and how we can support coastal communities to become the guardians of their blue carbon ecosystems. So I think I'd like to start with Juma. Juma, he leads the Mapape cooperative in Pemba. Now, Juma is one of the most successful sea cucumber farmers across Zanzibar, and I can say in East Africa. So what we want to speak today is about what has driven his successes and what has enabled him to be successful where many others have not. So, Juma, can you tell a little bit more about your story forming Mapape Cooperative, what your intentions were, and give us a little bit of an understanding of why you have been able to generate success in protecting your blue carbon ecosystems and generating livelihoods for yourself and your community. Yes.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity first, and I really value your attendance here. My name is Juma Ali from Tanzania, Zanzibar, based in Pemba Island. And we are the leading community-centered sea cucumber aquaculture. And we began our projects voluntarily. We began with mangrove restoration because our coastal community, they are much depending on the mangrove resources for their income. So, being see, many of mangrove resources have been depleted. We have come with the idea of finding an alternative income generating activities. And 2022, I wrote a project to the IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, and we secured 12 US dollars and starting the sea cucumber project with one farm with more than 4,000 sea cucumber. Being of starting these ideas of sea cucumber, we said that why do we depend much on the mangrove ecosystem? Why? So we should find another way to secure our mangroves. And thank to revolutionary government of Zanzibar in 2020, they established a Ministry of Blue Economy and Fisheries that was about our ideas come up. We started to invest in sea cucumber farming. And in 2024, we have got a chance for Blue Carbon Plus challenges that was conducted in Singapore, and we won 50K US dollars among more than 200 competitors. We Mapape, we were only one who won the prize. Thank you. I'm very happy to win the prize. And now we are just waiting the funds to be released to implement the major projects. But we are not really hesitate of conserving the mangrove forest. We are doing the big job for restoring our mangroves, and now we have 7 acres of mangrove that has been restored. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Juma. Thank you for that, and very well presented. Really a shining star in community-based aquaculture and also community-based resource management, taking the initiative, winning international prizes, and pulling that back into direct community conservation and livelihood development. So really proving that international funds can be channeled directly to coastal community organizations, allowing them to build the capacities in the whole aspect of developing a successful project, failing at times, succeeding at times, and being able to show case how replication can be undertaken as well. Juma, thank you for that. We look forward to coming back into that and asking about some of the key aspects that allowed your success and some of the challenges that you are still facing. But let's move on for now and speak a little bit about the work that Flora and Fauna has been doing in seagrass and coastal community conservation and blue carbon restoration. Sarah is the country manager for Flora and Fauna and has been deeply engaged in community-led conservation, particularly in the Lamu seascape, which is a particularly important area in Kenya because it holds such important and large mangroves and seagrass meadows, and the coastal communities there are very reliant on maintaining these ecosystems and hopefully working towards creating greater abundance. So, Sarah, we'd love to ask you, to introduce your work with flora and fauna and hear a little bit more about how you are supporting communities to be able to protect, restore, and to be able to financialize blue carbon resources so that they can become financially independent actors in resource management.
Thank you so much. Quickly to say that Fauna and Flora, an international charity, we are in more than 40 countries, and in Kenya we've been active since 1901 or thereabout. Lamu. So we work in Lamu, which is the northern Kenya seascape. We work in 2 areas of Lamu County, which is Pate Island and Kiunga. And basically Kiunga is our border with Somalia. So because of the remoteness and honestly associated security issues around there, it's quite a pristine area. And for sure we have extensive seagrass beds, and at least 70% of our national mangroves, they are found in this seascape. And biodiversity, because fauna and flora is especially biodiversity. And what really, I remember initially drew us to the area was also the fact that we had worked in the area for some time. And then we realized that biodiversity is really not being measured. But quickly to say, what are we doing? We work through partners as fauna and flora. And in Kenya actually is one of the key countries where we exemplify fauna and flora's work of working through partners almost entirely. And so in the northern Kenya seascape, we work through a number of organizations. There are a number of community level organizations, all of them legally formed. We know beach management units. I've had them mentioned across board. So we work through BMUs. We also work through community conservancies. Those ones are formed through the Wildlife Act. And therefore, for instance, are the ones which engage in working with the Wildlife Agency, because you also have marine protected areas. And when you go to locally managed marine areas, LMMS, it is the conservancies, community conservancies. That's the effective legislation. And then we also have community forest associations. Those are the ones working in the mangroves. So we have a number of community institutions. And then we work with a civil society organization called Northern Rangeland Trust. And we also partner laterally with the Nature Conservancy. So those are so whatever I'm presenting here, we can't honestly say it's only fauna and flora doing it. We are working with those partners and of course the communities themselves. So how do we engage communities? So how have we done this? So we've worked in this seascape since around 2011. So we've quite a number of years of experience there. So some of the key things I can highlight that we have done is establishment of 9 locally managed marine areas, covering an area of close to 800,000 hectares. So, of course, we know the process of, or a number of us are aware, meeting the criteria for LMMS and ensuring that they are verified and that we have community buy-in, mapping, demarcation, and all that, and of course working with the Wildlife Agency, which is Kenya Wildlife Service, and all the stakeholders. And then obviously with the community buy-in, the free prior informed consent, and there's a lot of community buy-in to the extent that communities are ready, especially in the Kiunga seascape, which is just next to Lamu, to add another over 500 hectares to LMMS so that we go to around 1,300 hectares. The other thing I can say, how we have engaged communities, is a fish to market scheme where we have a private sector off-taker. So communities who join the scheme subscribe to fishing sustainably. The gears, the species, the water, and then also to get involved in conservation activities. In exchange, they get premium prices and access to markets in the US and in the UK. So they subscribe to using, gear swaps where they are using the wrong gear and things like that. And so To that extent, we have seen quite a buy-in, and obviously money flowing from private sector. And obviously, how would communities access those markets? Even for us, I can say it has been a learning curve for us as well. So we have seen that become extremely successful, to the extent that over the last 3 years, I can say that the number of fishermen that have access to this opportunity has grown from 40 to over 300. And within that context, when we did surveys at the beginning of this year, we found that communities were making around £140,000 per year, accessing premium prices way above market. And then the other thing I can say we have done with communities to help conserve this, obviously we are helping communities like that so that there is an incentive for conservation of the ecosystems. Then maybe just the last thing I would like to say is that you have had the number of layers of organizations. So how do you find a governance structure which works? Because every community organization will be brandishing the act which formed them. One will be saying, we are legit under Fisheries Act, we are legit under Wildlife Act, we are legit under Forest Act, and we all have our mandates. So how do you work in that context together with government, county government, national institutions? And so finding a governance structure that works, our entry point became the conservancies, because they cover a larger jurisdiction. They are also led by civil society, and with local staff on the ground, they were able to mobilize everybody and to agree on a governance structure that actually works. So that is what I can say. And by doing that, they have accessed a lot of resources, not just from fauna and flora, but from other agencies, Danida, even for things like, wash, water provision, sanitation, and things like that. Those are some of the interventions that we have.
Wonderful. Sarah, thank you. And it sounds like absolutely exemplary work that Flora and Fauna is doing. And some of the key points that you mentioned in regards to the need for partnerships towards success, not trying to do everything on your own, but seeing what's been done already, linking up different actors, particularly in regards linking communities with private sector actors that can drive the financing that is needed for coastal communities to value these ecosystems and also to fund their ongoing efforts. A lot of conservation and restoration work comes under the governance needs of communities. And how do we fund those activities unless there's a financial driver? So that work you're doing in getting their fish to value-added markets sounds like something that can really be replicated, and look forward to diving into that a little bit more. Thank you. So we've heard some community approaches, some work that FFI is doing to support community approaches. And I think maybe we can take a bit of a wide-angle view now, and we can go to you, Sir Michael, and hear a little bit about the work in terms of carbon financing and how blue carbon restoration and blue carbon ecosystems are fitting into Kenya's national climate strategy. And would you be able to introduce yourself and share a little bit with us about how the work that you're doing at a high level connects directly to blue carbon ecosystem protection, and how and what role do you think that communities can play within that as well?
Hello, you can hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And you can hear me? Okay. Yeah, I'm very glad to be part of this panel, just to look into some of the things that are normally not very visible outside, especially when we go to the blue economy issues. We normally say in Kiswahili, chini ya maji, which means under the water and not very visible to those all of us, because we all live in the terrestrial lands. and not able to easily visualize things that are under the water. Yeah, so my name is Michael Okumu. I'm a deputy director in the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry in Kenya at the Climate Change Directorate. Now, the Climate Change Directorate is the institution in Kenya that is charged with coordinating, formulating, and or rather, coordinating the formulation, the implementation, and the reporting of climate action in Kenya. So at the Climate Change Directorate, I'm the one in charge of the NDC development. I'm also the one in charge of the BTR reporting, which is the reporting of the NDC achievements in simple terms. So maybe I should not assume that everybody understands what an NDC is. I like starting from some small basics so that people understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, it is well known that climate change is a global problem that affects all countries globally, and actions that we do from whichever side of the world will affect the other side of the world. So in 2015, countries came up with an agreement called the Paris Agreement at a COP that was held in Paris, France. And in that COP, or prior to that COP, parties were urged to come up with kind of promise intentions of what they can be able to do as a country to limit the increase in greenhouse gas emissions, and also to ensure there is resilience of communities due to climate change. So basically, that intention of clear priorities of what each country would do before the Paris Agreement was called intended nationally determined contributions. In other words, those were bottom-up kind of pledges by countries on what they can do to contribute to the overall global good, which is the global emissions reductions. So before the Paris Agreement, it was called the INDC, that is intended nationally determined contribution. Then after the Paris Agreement, parties ratified and submitted either new NDCs or with the INDC becoming their first NDC. So that is what we call the nationally determined contribution, or NDC. But in 2018, there was a special report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the scientific body that governs or guides policy makers on issues of climate change. And this report indicated that all those INDCs that countries had submitted were not sufficient to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, which is limiting emissions that would cause warming, limiting emissions or taking steps to reduce emissions so that the globe will not warm more than 2 degrees Celsius, and taking extra steps to ensure that this is limited to 1.5 above pre-industrial levels. So as a result, parties were then urged to submit a more ambitious NDCs to update whatever they had done, put in a little bit more effort to ensure that we meet our global goal. So in 2020, parties submitted updated NDCs. Others submitted totally new NDCs in 2020. And therefore, from 2020, we started implementing, that is officially or formally implementing the NDCs. So from 2020, most parties had their NDCs stretching to 2030, and we had negotiations for quite some time to agree on the timelines. So from this year, 2025, parties would be submitting those intentions every 5 years. That is, every 5 years, and being submitted 5 years in advance. Like this year, parties submitted for 2031 to 2035. Then after the submission is now the implementation of the same. Parties are supposed now to do their national processes to ensure that they implement those priorities that they outlined in the NDCs. And the parties have various diverse ways of going about it. As in Kenya, we have a document that is established by law for implementing all climate action in Kenya. It is called the National Climate Change Action Plan. So this is now the plan through which whatever aspirations are there in the NDC, stakeholders participatorily come up with what tangible things they can do on the ground to fulfill that broad category of promise that the country committed to. So as a result, we have different sectors going and looking into what is their priorities. To come straight now to the blue economy sector, for the Kenyan NDC, we had part of the NDC. We had three areas that touch on the blue carbon ecosystems. One is if you go to the Kenyan NDC of submitted in 2020, one is achieving tree cover of at least 10%, 10% of the land area of Kenya, and this speaks so much to the mangrove ecosystems. In our case here, the mangrove ecosystem, the Kenyan mangrove or the Kenyan coast rather has a great potential to really contribute to this goal of achieving Kenya's tree cover by at least 10%. The second one is the fourth bullet in the NDC that talks of scaling up nature-based solutions for mitigation. We know very well that most of the blue carbon ecosystems fall under nature-based solutions, and this is an area that we could also think wild and wide and come up with great things from the blue carbon economy. Then we have the 10th bullet actually talks of harnessing mitigation benefits of sustainable blue economy, including coastal carbon payment for ecosystem services. So this is the other area that legally gives Kenyans ground to come up with carbon markets and other areas that would generate resources and finances for the coastal communities. That is to contribute to the mitigation portion of our NDC. Our NDC has both adaptation and mitigation sections. For the adaptation section, we have basically two important bullets. One is enhancing the adaptive capacity and climate resilience across sectors. That is required across sectors. And this comes from the fact that all sectors in Kenya are vulnerable to climate change impacts. So there is need for resilience across all sectors of our economy. Then there is one also on enhancing investment in the ocean and blue economy. This is also another area that gives us a lot of focus to ensure that we exploit the blue carbon ecosystems in a sustainable manner and in a manner that will not only create resilience to the communities around coastal zones, but to the ecosystems themselves, because the communities may benefit from it at the expense of the ecosystem itself. So those are the most important and critical areas that we zoom into as regards to the implementation of the NDC. Then after that, we go to the reporting. The Paris Agreement requires that after every 2 years, we will be reporting these things we promised the world that we'll do as a country. And we came up in the negotiations with something called uh, the biannual transparency reports. Now, as part of the biannual transparency reports, we normally have what is called the greenhouse gas inventories. These are inventories that helps us to take stock using clear IPCC methodologies to know the level of emission in every sector. And this now, if we do this every year, it will, every 2 years, biennial, that is every 2 years, it means that after every 2 years, we'll know that we were here last year, this year we are here, so we are moving forward, or we are not moving, or we are moving backward. So that is the reporting of the implementation of climate action. And the first reporting for all countries was in December 2024 was the deadline. The next will be in December 2026, then like that every 2 years. And that will help us to know the progress that we are making towards achieving our NDCs, and it will make us also know how to plan for the coming NDCs so that we could be, more reasonable and more accurate in how we project our actions going forward. Yeah, thanks, and sorry for talking too much.
Michael, thank you so much for that. Comprehensive and very interesting, and great to hear that blue carbon ecosystems play a role and are being considered within the nationally determined contributions of Kenya. And it kind of ties interestingly into what Sarah was talking about, the need for evidence-based approaches, securing baselines so that the follow-up can be done, because a lot of restoration work can be tied into NDCs, but only if we can prove additionality, only if we can show that these works are actually going towards bettering our carbon budget. So thank you for that, very interesting. So back to community approaches now, and I'd like to introduce Nali, working with Blue Ventures, an organization that has really been spearheading and at the forefront of coastal community resource management strategies, particularly in Madagascar through LMMAs. And it's been wonderful hearing over the past day how many of those great works that were done in Madagascar are now spilling out into East Africa and the West Indian Ocean. So I'd love for you to introduce the work that Blue Ventures continues to do in empowering coastal communities to become the rightful managers of their blue carbon ecosystems, and some of the successes that you've had both in mangrove and seagrass ecosystems in Madagascar, and how that relates to the blue carbon and protection in general.
Yeah, thanks Tim for inviting me on this panel, and I'm honored to be part of this interesting panel. My name is Nali, and I'm the head of Partnership Network The head of policy and partnership is the former title, but still in partnership, before institutional partnership, and now organizational and community partnership. And this is really an interesting position because I witness how the community work on the ground and also have a connection to the decision making on the top level in terms of with the government and the of a regional discussion. That's really a huge question and a huge story behind Blue Ventures activities. I'm gonna divide my presentation in three parts. First, about the story of LMA in Madagascar. LMA in Madagascar started in 2006 in the southwest of Madagascar with the first octopus closure led by the community of Velunjik. This community set up this octopus closure, and this pilot, this successful pilot, inspired fishing communities across Madagascar to adopt that approaches to manage their own fisheries management. Today, we have more than 280 LMA across Madagascar, managing mangrove forests, coral reef, seagrass meadow, and also fisheries related to these key habitats. So this highlights how communities, when empowered, informed, and have access for peer-to-peer learning, can drive the sustainable management of marine and fisheries resources at their localities. Not so far in 2022, also in Velunjik, where the LMA started, the community started the implementation of non-take zone on seagrass, and right now there are more than 16 seagrass non-take zone in the area, and also in another community along the coastline of Madagascar. It means there are these over effective conservation measures that are led by the community and for the communities, and these small initiatives are designed from local perspective, are tackling right now global issue like climate change. And that's come to my third presentation, third part of the presentation on how this local perspective contributes to a global challenges like climate change, mitigation, and adaptation activities. In Velunjik, in 2014, they started a blue carbon project, the first community blue carbon project in Madagascar and also in the world, I guess. We supported the community in the technicality aspect of that work. And in 2019, they are certificated under Plan Vivo. And in 2020, the community came up to establish their first emission reduction purchase agreement. So Madagascar has right now a legal framework that supports communities to this carbon credit market. However, during the last couple of years, there is still effort needed in terms of policy to speed up this process, as we are still waiting for the approbation of this ERPA, emission reduction purchase agreement, as this within the current policy, all carbon credits are owned by the government, and the government is the signatory of all carbon credit exchange or agreement in the country. And the power of community in driving that process, going to the minister to the ministry office to advocate and ask to expedite that process is really helpful, highlighting that the community's ownership of local activities, blue carbon activities, can be replicated with political will and setting up an appropriate legal framework that supports communities, and also setting up a long-term and adapted funding mechanism to support the communities. So that story say that LMMAs, communities, can drive the initiative, can drive the solution to tackle this climate change, and it needs NGO support, government support, politician support to be scaled up and speed up. Thank you.
Wonderful, Nali, thank you. And so inspiring to hear the stories of coastal communities going to ministers to ask for greater work in blue carbon ecosystem protection. And I think that what you were talking about there, especially in regards to those early seagrass protection efforts and no-take zones in Bilandriake, really ties into particularly the work of Juma and Sarah as well, in terms of how to use financial drivers as a means towards immediate blue carbon ecosystem protection and restoration. So, for example, and I know from experience, some of those early blue ventures, seagrass meadow no-take zones were initially funded by sea cucumber aquaculture that was being undertaken within those areas. So we know that in order for blue carbon restoration work to be valued in regards additionality and sequestration in terms of their benefits to the NDCs of a country, it takes some time. And it's a long process, as with the RED process still ongoing in Madagascar with some of those areas. But what we do know, and what is really important, is the need for verification of those restoration benefits before those carbon crediting mechanisms can come in, carbon financing, and potentially in the future biodiversity financing as well. So really what we're looking for in the blue carbon restoration protection field, particularly working with coastal communities, are financial drivers that can protect these areas immediately, whilst generating the evidence needed for them to be able to fit within to carbon financing and biodiversity financing opportunities that are developing now. So that really feeds back into the work that Juma is doing, and it'd be wonderful to hear a little bit more about how you gathered support for your activity in Mapape, and what additional support is needed by Mapape to be able to grow your activities, both financial and technical, or governance related, and how the good work that you have done can be scaled out. How can we allow for more people, more coastal communities to replicate the work that you have done already?
Thank you again. As I said before, I'm not alone representing my community inside. However, we have done a wonderful job in Mapape Cooperative Society, but there are still need for access to capital and financing. For those who knows the coastal community, coastal community is very difficult people. When you say that you have to go away from the coast because you are distracting the mangrove, or you are distracting the seagrass, is very difficult, because what are you going to give what are you going to give the alternatives? And they have a lot of ideas. They have the ideas of crab fattening, bee farming, beekeeping, uh, aquaculture, maybe fish farming. But the only problem is access to funds. They have the ideas, but the fund is difficult. And I think some of financial institutions maybe they afraid, they're not aware of profitability from sea cucumber farming. Maybe they stop from funding. And if they are aware about the sea cucumber farming, the sea cucumber farming can be a good business to invest in, because I can say that for 1 kg grade A of sea cucumber, 1 kg cost 400,000 T shillings. See? So it's big money for 1 kg. So why not investing in the sea cucumber? So the access for funding is major problems. And technical capacity. Technical capacity for those who are farming, maybe for those who are doing aquaculture, is the problem. Maybe we can maybe have something called the RAS, recruiting aquaculture system. Maybe can help the coastal community to do their aquaculture in a modern ways. And the next thing, I think it is market access, value chains, and maybe branding of their products. For instance, if you come in Zanzibar there and you want seaweeds, you will get hundreds of tons of seaweeds. You will get more than 100 tons of seaweeds, but they lack market access. This is a big problem. They lack market access. The government of Zanzibar tried to have fixed the price for their seaweeds, but still the seaweed product has low price. The people are not ready to do more jobs, no more works for seaweeds productions, because the seaweed is low in price. So if the coastal community, they get a market access for their product, maybe it will be another steps for community development. You see, is it
Wonderful.
wonderful, sir?
Juma, thank you so much. You hit upon so many really relevant points there. And just to start off with recapping the fact that the ideas are there. Coastal communities have so many potential mechanisms to value blue carbon resources and ecosystems, but the access to financing is not catching up. The technical expertise they need to be able to undertake these activities in a financially remunerative way often, and also in a way that is restorative to the ecosystems that they are undertaking their work within. Market access, what a key piece of the puzzle, because you can do a lot of work, you can produce a product which is restorative, but if you can't finance the long-term business sustainability of these activities, we are not going to be developing durable and long-lasting blue carbon restoration works. So that really ties into some of the work that you were mentioning earlier, Sarah, in terms of how you are linking private sector buyers, private sector experience directly to coastal communities, and how that is really driving forward coastal resource management in Lamu. And I'd love for you to just expound a little bit more about how you believe the private sector can play a role in empowering coastal community resource management and blue carbon ecosystem restoration?
Thank you so much. I could just start by saying that, so I'm a natural resource management practitioner, studied wildlife management, entered the job market almost a quarter century ago. And the biodiversity challenge has grown worse meanwhile. And that is how I would like to first just start off. And I think generally for natural resource management and nature, where the marine biodiversity lies and the challenges that we are talking about, for sure, I think in conservation, in a way, we love to preach to the choir. And it could be, it's not our fault. Because when I was in the university, even when I studied in Europe, nobody taught me how to engage private sector. And so in a way, we lack the skills. And I don't know whether we are well equipped to reach out for those skills, or whether we even have the humility to realize that we have severe limitations and there are others who could actually come to the table, and we open ourselves up for the uncomfortable discussions with the sectors that in natural resource management, traditionally we have looked at them as the bad guys. Because most of the time in natural, when you say private sector, people already think, but these are the bad guys who are doing the wrong, finger pointing. Having said that, the work that we did, I can honestly say that we almost didn't work with this private sector. Because within fauna and flora, the entire decision-making hierarchy, it was difficult to showcase beforehand, before we engage with them, that it will work. And what are the risks? So these are the questions you have to, we are natural resource management practitioners. As a manager, you asked, what if it doesn't work? What are the risks? What are we what are we exposing ourselves to? And I remember getting even a comment of, if we make money, they get all, if the scheme, the fish to market scheme is successful, they get to make all the profit because they are a profit-making entity. If it doesn't work, we get all the liability. I got such a comment, whether it is reputational and all that. And so I remember it was a split decision, like we almost didn't even pilot this because we couldn't prove before. And of course we were saying, we think it's a good idea. We will never learn unless we get out and do it. And what are we going to do with this community? How are we going to get them to conserve the marine resources if we come with same old, has never worked kind of approach? And therefore, what I can say is that first we have to business, and I think maybe we have some business people here, but private sector, it comes with a risk. And so we need to be able to assess what the risks are, and to what extent we need to expose to expose ourselves to some element of risk. I think without wanting to expose ourselves to any risk, it may not work with private sector. The other thing is, for us, how it has worked is that the private sector engages in the private business part of it. The sourcing of markets, the certification, and all that. For us, our work is to ensure traceability and sustainability, to organize communities, to get communities to engage, and to ensure whatever is being done is sustainable, because private sector do not have those skills. So it's a symbiotic kind of, it's a partnership. There's what we know. I don't know a lot of the stuff that they do. And they also, they may not even know a lot of the stuff that we do. But they provide the inputs, the cooler boxes, the bait, the bait, whatever. And yeah, so, the post-handling, training, and all that. And that is what they do. And then they market. they tell us the species that have high demand and better prices. And what I can say is that the pilot has been successful. In fact, in Kenya, we are scaling up. Currently, we are in the midst of scaling up this work from Lamu to the entire northern Kenya coast, which will actually see the area of our territorial waters that is under sustainable management go up from 4%, from 7% to 24%. And the private sector have come along. In fact, they requested to partner. We are going to a new seascape, it's the Kilifi seascape, and that there the context is very different. The fishermen there don't own boats. In Lamu, they own boats. In Kilifi, they are mostly employed. In boats, they don't own. But the private sector came along and said that in this place, we are going to do it differently. We are going to get bigger fishing vessels which can go offshore and have multi-day fishing effort. And we are going to train these communities to do that. And we won't just get one boat. If we can get a few of them so that the BMUs can come together, we get like 3 boats, and they can also now bunch together and get out, because we know the problems of just fishing near waters there. That's where the biodiversity challenge is actually. And also issues around profitability. And so we are there, we are partnering with county governments who actually have boats which they bought. And I think for Lago, I don't know what the challenge was, the boats have been idle. So guess what? The boats are there. The private sector is there ready to engage. The communities are there. And on top of that, we are not just going to work with this one private sector, but within that expansion, we are looking at crowdfunding from different entities, corporates, and we've already had one roundtable with private sector convened by the British High Commission in Kenya, very high level. The High Commissioner was there, and there is a lot of interest from private sector. In fact, private sector told us, tell us what you want in very straightforward ways. We can hear you have an idea. Can you go and make it very granular? But we can hear interesting things, but you need to get very specific. And so now, that's the first thing we need to do. Coming together, the different skills that we have, so that we can make it very specific. What are we asking them to do? Is it provision of cold storage? What is it? What do we want? Do we want them to provide finance? Do we want credit to communities? Do we want partnerships? They can come and train, but what do we want? As soon as we are clear about what we want, private sector is ready to engage. And so I can honestly say we are not doing it because we are learning as we go, in short. And that's why I was saying, in many ways, we shouldn't be so scared that even if nobody has done it before, I think if we think it can work and we have reasonable grounds, then we go and try it. Otherwise, then if we succeed, others will learn from us. If we fail, we learn lessons, and maybe we go improve where we failed and come back again and do it the right way this time round. But I think maybe sometimes we really try to play it safe so much that innovation is actually, we just want to write the proposal now, US stop work order has come, we all want to write the same proposal, get the funding, implement 3 years, go back, write another proposal. Yeah.
Wow. Wonderful, Sarah. So much to dig into there. And I like how you started that off with the fact that we are in a field where in some places there's not been significant development and success for going on 2 decades. The time really is now that we need to make big, bold bets. We need to take risks, and we need to find ways that market-driven approaches can support coastal conservation and community empowerment. And the work that you've been doing there, connecting fishers to the private sector, sounds like a really good case example of exactly that. So really congratulations on that work. And I think I'd like to then take that to you, Nali, and hear following on from Sarah's work, talking about how FFI has been working almost as a facilitator between community resource managers and the private sector. And I know that Blue Ventures has done a lot of work integrating with seaweed, sea cucumber, and marine products like octopus, and the role that civil society and NGO organizations have to mediate those relationships and to ensure transparency and fairness, and to be able to guide these market relationships towards the overall goal of ecosystem restoration. And yeah, if you could just talk to a little bit about how Blue Ventures has mediated some of those partnerships between coastal communities and the private sector, would be very interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that question, and also opportunity to share again. Yeah, Blue Ventures work, especially in the Southwest. We connect the communities with the private sector, especially organizations specialists in seaweed farming and sea cucumber farming. And we do support, especially in the governance part of farm creation, and the private sector provide juveniles, and also have a market agreement with the communities. So on the products at the end of a production, the company buy the product with agreed price between communities and the private sectors. But in terms of how we scale up this across Madagascar, we do have also legal framework which banned sea cucumber juvenile fish for sea cucumber farming, and we need to increase and build national hatchery that can support other activities in another area. But Madagascar is 5,000 kilometers of coastline, and one hatchery can't cover that. That's why we are struggling in some part of the area where we work to replicate that model, because economically it is not profitable for the company, because the place where juveniles are produced until another part of Madagascar, the cost of transportation is really high. And I think that is an opportunity of market that companies, as you said, willing to take the risk on investing on that activities is still big and high. And I think there is also support in terms of research and technical capabilities to spread up this model and these activities in another party. We do have in the East Coast also an initiative like that that I think deserve more study, and on how we can support the community in the East Coast to have this model replicated. And yeah, Blue Ventures also is now starting working in the East Coast with our partners in Saint Mary Island, and I think we will remain as the connectors between communities and private sectors to support this alternative livelihoods. No, thank you.
Nali, thank you. And you bring a really interesting point there in terms of initial successes that have got the capacity to scale, but the financial investment necessary needs to be somewhat offset, you could say. And this is the role that we can see this novel financing, like blended finance, coming into play. to be able to support the private sector, to be able to take more risky financial bets that have payoffs that are going to benefit coastal communities and ecosystem restoration. So leveraging the successes that are have proven results, but that might be a bit of a tough investment. This is where blended finance can really come to the fore. So with that, it'd be interesting to hear, Michael, what we can do as those working either as coastal community project managers or those looking to support coastal communities. What can we do to elevate their voice into the discussions that you're having at a national level, so that we can drive greater financing to their activities and more recognition for them as working towards our climate change goals?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it all this debate at the end of the day is for the purposes of the people at the local level who are seriously adversely affected by climate change to be reached, so that we all have various roles to play, and there is no category of those stakeholders we have mentioned here that is less important than the other. The government has a role to play as government, basically to create enabling policy environment to ensure that everyone play their role so as to ensure that there is resilience on the ground. So for governments, our role is ensure that we have the right policies, right institutional frameworks, right legislative frameworks, so that even those private sector who may want to invest, they feel secure because there are adequate laws governing whatever they are supposed to do, and there is what I call predictability in investing in that particular market. The private sector also have a role because most of these things, of course, private sector basically they have to invest, and out of their investment they need some return on their investments. And for this to occur well, it is important therefore that there are clear grounds laid for them so that they are able to invest and get the output of whatever they invested, and at the same time the desired output or the desired outcome is realized, in the sense that at the end of the day the communities on the grounds are happy, the government is not complaining of anything, and at the same time the civil society organizations who are engaged in that particular sector are also able to play their role in that particular sector. So in Kenya, what we do, we have a constitution that has forced some of us, let me say, some of us in government who liked shortcuts, to have serious engagement with communities and with various stakeholders on any, for instance, law or policy that we want to come up with, so that at the end of the day we soberly look into the interests of everybody. We have everybody's input taken into consideration, so that we are able to come up with solid legal and institutional frameworks that will enhance various actors playing their effective roles. So as regards community engagement, and we have a project, maybe many of you may have heard of it, called the Financing Locally Led Climate Action. This is basically an adaptation program, not actually project, but program that was crafted both by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and the Treasury of Kenya, with the help of World Bank. We came up with a very, very innovative project whereby communities are able to undertake what is called participatory community risk assessments, participatory climate risk assessments at the community level. They are able to identify their climate change challenges, and they are able to prioritize them, and they are able to thereafter come up with what we call community action plans, which are basically plans that, if they follow, will sort the risk that they identified within their communities. And as such, we have found within communities, we have found very, very many serious actors within communities who are able to play significant roles in various sectors to enhance the resilience of communities. We have been able to get serious private sector players who are also able to come up and sort out a community problem from the private sector perspective, because there's those problems that make business sense, and therefore it is easy for private sector to come in and sort out. And when that is well done, it ends up creating resilience at the community level. Let me also say that apart from community projects and so on, we also have the potential that we have in the carbon markets. And this is the area whereby the government of Kenya, for instance, have recently, we had to do an amendment of the Climate Change Act to be able to integrate some of the requirements of the international processes for carbon markets, so that we create a legislative framework for private sector to engage with communities in carbon trading. And in so doing, we have ended up now with a lot of interest in by private sector engaging in carbon markets at community level. And we have also ended up also having very many actors being sensitized and aware of some of the things we were unable to do as government because of various actors playing their role. I normally tell people that the climate change field is a very big forest. You are not able to go alone. The government is unable to do anything alone. And private sector need the government, civil society need the government, communities need the private sector, need civil society, need the government. At the end of the day, we all need each other so that we are able to play a critical role. Let me say that personally, I've learned quite a lot during the process of development of the new NDC that we submitted in April this year. By engaging flora and fauna, I was able to understand even what all these seagrass and so on is all about. As a government official, I was okay. My background is not on marine ecosystems, but I was able to learn quite a lot, and from there I've really been able to appreciate what potential is in the blue ecosystems, ranging from seagrass, mangrove, and so on. So I just want to emphasize the fact that we all need each other, and nobody can do it alone in this particular space. Thank you.
Michael, wonderful. And I think you've done an even better job than I could have wrapping that all up into a cohesive whole, mentioning how and the diverse roles of different actors in the sector can come together towards blue carbon ecosystem restoration. Government providing enabling policy, civil society and NGOs working to play a role in ensuring and safeguarding that there are restorative benefits and making sure that the community relationships with the private sector hold true. And then community actors at the forefront of this restorative work, undertaking the key pieces of work in the water that is needed to be done. And then the private sector bringing a really important market-based approach to it, or to ensure the financial sustainability of these endeavors in the long run. So I'd like if everyone here could give a really big round of applause for our speakers today, and thank you again.